Good morning, everyone, and welcome to another Full Press NFL Sunday. It is October 8th. It is week 5 in the NFL. And just like last weekend, Braden, we already got ourselves a football game going on right now. And as everyone predicted, the Jacksonville Jaguars are up 11-0. Sounds like the Dodgers game the other night, actually, to be honest with you. Not so much a football game. But nonetheless, Jacksonville's jumping out to an early lead. And on top of that, though, the most concerning thing, Von Miller may be back, but Matt Milano just got carted off on the field, and it did not look good. So, Buffalo is a team that really the only thing more they can accomplish is actually going out and winning a Super Bowl, and it seems like they just can't catch a break, even though they were starting to kind of round into form. Right now, they're down against Jacksonville, who clearly looks like they've been here for 2 weeks, and by here I mean London.
Yeah, it's just kind of funny how well they always play over there. Obviously, with the ownership having soccer team that they own over there, it just seems like they kind of know how to get their guys comfortable in London. And like you said, that extra time there has probably certainly helped. I don't think Buffalo got there till Friday, is what the broadcast said. So it's also a team that Josh Allen and the Bills have usually had a lot of tight, close games with. So it's one of those matchups that, for whatever reason, the Bills just lately have had a lot of tough times with. And right now, Trevor Lawrence looks really comfortable and making a lot of quick reads, some sharp throws in there. So we'll see if this continues.
Yeah, I mean, it should have been it should have been concerning for Buffalo when I picked them earlier this week to win this game, and I guess I'm giving it away what I picked. But I don't want to look at I actually have avoided looking at what my record is for picks because I know it's abysmal. Like it's almost to the point where like why would anyone ever listen to me if I actually told them what my record was and making these predictions? But just trust me when I say I do this, to it's reverse psychology. I do this on purpose. I pick the wrong team to force the other team to win. But yeah, no, look, I mean, Buffalo, they're starting to move the ball a little bit here, and if they can get on the board, I mean, first quarter is just wrapping up now, so if they can get on the board and settle things down, they can get right back into this. Jacksonville has obviously had their struggles this season, and if we were talking about this game, before it kicked off, we'd talk about Jacksonville as probably being one of the more disappointing teams through the first 4 weeks of the season. And, that's because they came into the season with a lot of high expectations and kind of dropped the ball, so to speak, in a few of those. So we will be obviously keeping an eye on that game as it goes on, as we're on the air and everything like that. We'll try to provide some updates if you happen to be watching us exclusively. I appreciate that. Thank you very much. I'm honored, but if you are, we will provide you with updates. If not, we'll just tell you things that you obviously have already seen. So, but before we get to the meat and potatoes of today, which is a lot of games, a couple really big key ones, most notably, obviously Sunday Night Football tonight between the 49ers and the Cowboys. We got some more news this week, though. Jonathan Taylor is back after what felt like months of petty back and forth between the Colts and Jonathan Taylor has resulted in a pretty nice contract for the running back, and he should be back with the team. The window for him to open up in practice had already been open, but the deal coming down yesterday. So, definitely a big thing to have a guy like Jonathan Taylor in the mix when you're dealing with a rookie quarterback. This Indy team has played pretty well throughout the first 4 weeks. I don't think they're a great team by any means, but I think they've certainly surprised a little bit in terms of how well they've played and how competitive they've remained in a lot of these games. Definitely a big deal for the Colts. And, again, I don't think this all of a sudden it makes them title contenders, but I think it was good on their behalf to get the business side of it done, get the guy paid, and now you hope that he delivers on the contract.
Right. Yeah. I guess the only surprising thing, I guess, for me, maybe with getting the deal done now, I wasn't really sure if the Colts were going to pay him coming off the year he had last year. It's one thing to see, Saquon and Josh Jacobs hold out this offseason after getting tagged, and those guys coming off of big years. But obviously, last year was Taylor's worst season. Looked hurt most of the year. Just not a lot of big chunk games that we were used to seeing. So I guess that was maybe the only surprising thing, maybe with the timing of the deal. But it's always funny to just see how some of these player situations play out, where it seems like they never want to obviously put that team's uniform on again, and then we just see these big deals come out. So it's always kind of funny to just see how these sagas usually work more often than not. It usually just leads to a resolution where they're going to stay together. That's what happened here. And obviously, Jonathan Taylor led the league in rushing, I believe, 2 years ago. So you mentioned just having that with the rookie quarterback, Anthony Richardson. I think that's so big for Shane Steichen and his offense coming into this year. I think you already have seen the damage Richardson has done with his legs a little bit. And I think it's going to be just that much more. That much more challenging for some of these defenses to really how they're going to have to attack the Colts. I mean, how many guys do you keep in the box? Containing the edges. So it's just another dynamic that makes this Colts offense a little more unpredictable. And I think their offensive line so far has bounced back for the most part compared to what we saw last year.
Yeah, and that's again part of the surprising part of their start, so to speak. Again, because I don't know how many people predicted them to have a whole lot of success. I mean, obviously the uncertainty around a rookie quarterback, but and he goes down for an injury, misses a game, but luckily you have this generation's Ryan Fitzpatrick and Gardner Minshew, and he's capable of putting together some good football in a pinch. So yeah, again, I mean it's definitely it's not a bad thing for Indianapolis. Whether or not this makes them a serious playoff contender, I think remains to be seen. But if he brings some fluidity and some explosiveness to this Indy offense, then all of a sudden this might open things up for Richardson and the rest of the group. So another move that was made in the last couple of days was the trade of wide receiver Chase Claypool from the Bears to the Dolphins. And as often, this happens all the time when a team trades for a player that has a name that's recognizable. It's embarrassment of riches, this, that, and the other. The reality of it is Chase Claypool has run himself out of two historic franchises. Now, I'm not going to give the Bears credit for being a well-run organization, but the Steelers certainly are one of the better run organizations, and he's run his course so far in his young career through two franchises. Now, he goes to a Miami team where he is, at best a third or fourth option for this team. At worst, he's an afterthought. I think the biggest thing for him is not necessarily him accumulating a bunch of yards, but for Miami is he going to be able to handle not being the focus? Is this going to be a good or bad thing for him? Because clearly, having high expectations has not suited him well. So perhaps lower expectations on a team that obviously does have a lot of offensive talent may be good for him. But another move that we've seen more and more the last handful of years, the trade market really heat up during the trade deadline. Something that was never really the case before in the NFL. But now you're starting to see more players get moved. And like I said, I think for Miami, you can't really lose in this situation. If it doesn't work, it doesn't work. This is the same thing that the Patriots went through for years. It's like, okay, you bring in a guy, Josh Gordon. If it works, it works. You're not relying on him necessarily. You're not bringing him in to change the trajectory of your franchise. Same with Kansas City. They don't bring these guys in to, redefine their offense. They bring them in to complement it. And, if Chase Claypool can make some plays for the Dolphins, then their offense is a little bit more explosive. The problem for the Dolphins, though, Braden, is they don't need help on offense. They need help on defense. And I don't know what this move necessarily does in that regard.
Yeah, I guess the only thing I can kind of think of is maybe perhaps McDaniel will kind of use him maybe as a tight end flex weapon. They've really kind of whacked production at that tight end spot. Mike Gesicki obviously had some moments there, but really since this offense kind of changed with the coaching change, it's really kind of been not a lot of production from that spot. You have Durham Smythe has kind of been the main guy, I believe. that's been relied on there, but really kind of a one-dimensional player, not necessarily a great blocker. I know just back at draft time, I think a lot of Dolphins fans were hoping that they'd maybe add a tight end that can kind of do it all. So maybe they kind of try that with Chase Claypool, maybe a little wide receiver, tight end flex, have him work the middle of the field. We've seen him, kind of struggle with contested catch situations, dropping the ball, even mistiming his jumps at times. So maybe just a little more simple route package and routes that he's doing there could perhaps help him. It's just like you said, hard to know. Possibly is probably wide receiver 3 or 4, how much time he's going to get. So I don't know if this will really be a move that'll help him right away, but maybe late in the season against some tougher opponents, we'll see if he's given some more opportunities.
Yeah, and again, that's if you're Chase Claypool, you have to personally look at it as a situation where, like, yeah, this. I mean, if you're gonna get things right in your career, this is the place to do it because, again, expectations are at their lowest, and the opportunities may not be as plentiful, but they're going to be opportunities, and you're going to have opportunities to do things in games where your team scores a lot of points, which you know doesn't mean that you necessarily played great, but it's a good reflection on you because you're in a successful offense. Like in Chicago, for the most part, it wasn't that. So, again, something to worth monitoring. Again, I'm not sure. The Dolphins obviously need far more help on defense. So for their offense, great. It's going to help fantasy wise, but I don't think it does anything to change the pendulum in the AFC. It's just it's still the same it was, I guess, the last couple weeks. So,
Yeah.
all right, let's dive into the rest of Week 5 here because we're getting there's about 11 minutes left in the second quarter in the Buffalo and Jacksonville game, and Jacksonville has the ball back. About I think they're on the 35-yard line. So, excuse me. We'll see if they can start to build some separation here, and then I can really just warn people that the teams that I pick here in just a minute are probably going to lose. So, anyways, like I said earlier, I did pick Buffalo to win this game. Jacksonville has obviously kind of struggled a little bit out of the gate, certainly fallen short of their high expectations. Buffalo, despite that first week blunder, has really looked good the last 3 weeks. They have obviously struggled this week, and we'll see how that goes. But I did pick Buffalo, so full disclosure, and that's who I picked. I'm not going to sit here and pretend like I picked an upset. I didn't. So we'll move on to the next game, and we were just talking about Indianapolis, and they are hosting Tennessee today. And talk about disappointing teams. Well, Tennessee's right up there as well for the most part. I took Indianapolis at home. The spread was -1 in favor of Indianapolis at the time, so I'll take Indy.
Yeah, I'll go Indy as well. Titans lately have had a stranglehold on this division rivalry. I think Mike Vrabel's won 5 in a row against the Colts, so Indy's itching to get this win, I think, and just like kind of their full body of work so far, a little bit more consistent, especially on offense. So I'm going to go with the Colts and have them kind of take control of the division. Perhaps you got all 4 teams at 2-2 right now, so somebody's got to get to 3-2. I'll take the Colts.
Next, a surprising team, not a disappointing team, the Houston Texans heading to Atlanta. And through the first month, we might have to adjust expectations and say, well, no, Houston could very much win this division. And I think they might take a step closer to that. I mean, it's early, but a step closer to that this weekend when they take on the Falcons, who all of a sudden are in the middle of a quarterback panic because Desmond Ritter just had too much up and down, too high, too lows, and they've lost some games because of it. They're going to lose this one too, so I like Houston on the road.
Yeah, I like Houston as well. CJ Stroud, I'm hoping I'm not putting a jinx out there, but obviously no interceptions thrown so far in his young career. I just like the touch that he's used attacking down the field. He's unlike Desmond Ritter, not really playing that hesitant. I think he's a great leader for this Texans team. Just kind of listening to him in some interviews this week. So big fan of Stroud. I also think the defense in Houston's quietly already starting to take some shape. So give me the Texans here.
Next, Detroit hosting Carolina. I like Detroit. I mean, they're favored by 9, and I think that's pretty appropriate. I think their offense is playing well. I think they've settled pretty well on defense. So yeah, give me the Lions at home.
Yeah, give me the Lions as well. Not a whole lot to add. It's kind of weird to see already some angst among Frank Reich and kind of obviously some confusion based on what he said in the media last week on some play calling situations last week. I think Lions have some guys injured and out, but I think with how their defense is playing and the Panthers starting slow with Bryce Young, I got to go with Detroit here.
Next, we have Pittsburgh hosting Baltimore. This is obviously at times, can't miss television. There's always a chance for a very entertaining game between these two, and I think you're going to get that today. But I like Baltimore here. I think Pittsburgh is. I think some people might have tricked themselves into thinking that they were a little bit better than they had hoped. But now Kenny Pickett's injured, and I like Baltimore, even though Baltimore, they got some things to work out on their own. But I do like their yes, happy football Sunday, and I'm to Chris Rucker, and I'm still upset about those Cowboys last week. So that's about the nicest thing I'm going to say about them moving forward. But good thing for Rucker. I may be picking against them later in this episode, and that's always going to be a good thing for him because it means they're probably going to win. Anyway, so I like Baltimore in this one. Again, I hope we get one of those classic NFC North. 38-3, whatever. NFC North, or I'm sorry, AFC North showdowns. But I like Baltimore to squeak this one out. It's going to be sloppy, but.
Yeah, I like Baltimore as well. Huge chance here to get their third road division win already this early in the season. When the rest of the division's kind of still figuring out their identity or obviously struggling. And yeah, it's just I can't really take the Steelers seriously right now. It just seems like offensively not willing to make any adjustments. We know the Matt Canada situation is what it is. I don't know if Mike Tomlin can continue to be that loyal to him, but it'll be shocking if he makes a change very soon, I think. And it's just an offense that are very predictable. You know what it's going to be every single drive. So I like the Ravens, even though, like you said, not quite firing on all cylinders yet, but I think they'll get it done today.
Next, we have the Patriots hosting New Orleans. And look, I mean, I think these two teams are pretty identical. They're pretty good on defense, mediocre on offense, and they tend to shoot themselves in the foot at every opportunity that they can. So who's going to win? Well, I'll take the Patriots because they're at home, but flip a coin and yeah, I mean, again, swap the jerseys. You might not even be able to tell the two teams apart.
I went with the Saints, and yeah, I guess I'd put like a shrug emoji by it. I like you said, it's kind of a flip a coin game to me. Patriots injuries. It's unfortunate with Christian Gonzalez, Matt Judon
Mhm.
both going down. Hate to see that, but I like you said, kind of flip a coin. I'll go with the Saints.
Next, Dolphins hosting the Giants. For me, I like the Dolphins. Like I said, they have problems on defense. Those problems aren't going to be exploited by the Giants. So I think that the Dolphins win this game pretty comfortably.
Yeah, Miami pretty comfortably. You got New York not only struggling, but a lot of attention outside of just football with the Evan Neal comments and how that kind of transpired with the New York media. It's just a sticky situation there. And Daniel Jones, it's not been his entire fault, but certainly taken a step back and how he's played. So I like Miami, probably the maybe the biggest win of the day. We'll see. Maybe they'll get to 75 points today.
Yeah, maybe. I mean, remember the Giants gave up 40 in that opening night loss to that team that hasn't done anything since the mid 90s. Uh, Next, we have the Rams hosting the Eagles. I like the Eagles in this one, but I gotta admit that I was very down on the Rams coming into the season, but I think they've overachieved. And not in a bad way. I don't mean that as an insult. I think they've really kind of hunkered down, and I got to give them credit for winning football games. And I think they'll keep this one close and competitive and everything like that. But I still like the Eagles to stay undefeated. And look, I mean, the Eagles, it's not always pretty for them. That close one with Washington. Uh, it's, and Chris, you're right. He says Philly could easily be 2-2, but I almost kind of look at these close victories as a good thing and not a sign. Like Minnesota last year, I think we all saw was just a fraud of a team at 13-4. I think this is a good thing for Philadelphia because if you think about it, the biggest concern for them was losing a lot of the talent that helped, especially on defense, that helped get them to the Super Bowl. Um,
Right.
they've been able to overcome some of that and still remain at 4-0. So I got to give them a lot of credit for that. And I think the Rams are good. I don't think they're going to be good enough to upset the Eagles today. So give me Philadelphia.
Yeah, Philadelphia in a close one as well for me. It's I think this is a game where the Rams, I think maybe question marks in the trenches is really going to be exposed. I think if anything, even with the early struggles of the Eagles, I think they're still always going to have that advantage and that domination in the trenches. So I think that'll be the biggest difference today, and Philly gets the job done.
All right, next the Bengals at Arizona, and the Bengals have to win this game, right? I mean, Arizona, like I'm not. I mean, Arizona could very easily win this game. I'm not saying that at all. The way the Bengals are playing and the way Arizona has played, I'm not. I'm not going to put it past them. But I have to think that desperation is going to win out in this, and I think obviously the far more desperate team right now is the Bengals because if the Bengals lose this game, I mean you probably start to consider, depending on the health of Joe Burrow, just shutting it down for the rest of the year because at 1-4, you're not climbing out of that hole. And
Mhm.
do you risk potentially losing Burrow for if he has a severe calf strain. I know he said he's getting healthier and he's feeling better and all that stuff, but we know how those things can linger and how they could potentially lead to things far worse. Uh, at 1-4, do you want to keep it, keep that risk high for a very minimal return, or do you consider the long term ramifications and say, okay, this might be a lost season? So uh, Cincinnati's desperate, so I got to pick the Bengals, which is probably the nail in their coffin because they're probably going to get blown out today.
Yeah, it's for me, I guess strictly with picks. I guess I went with the Cardinals mostly just because I don't think I could take Cincinnati until they really start to show a little bit something. I even with the offensive struggles, I think the defense has been pretty disappointing as well outside of the Rams game. I mean, they let Derrick Henry run all over them last week. Just kind of we're not and obviously they're putting some tough holes with their offense struggling, but we're not really seeing those kind of momentum changing boosts that we're used to seeing from the Bengals defense either. James Conner looks comfortable. Josh Dobbs, I think is a perfect team or a perfect quarterback for this team that no one was giving them a chance. So I'll go with the Cardinals. I think it could be a pretty low scoring game, maybe similar to the Monday night one with the Rams. But yeah, I just can't take Cincinnati until maybe they start to show a little something.
All right, next we have the Nathaniel Hackett Bowl. Jets heading to Denver to take on the Broncos and what should be an absolutely awful game. So I'll take the Jets because I think they're a little bit better. Um, question mark? I don't know. I don't even know if I'm convinced of that statement. But one of these teams have to win, and I'll take the Jets because again I if I had to pick individual sides on this, Sean Payton is Sean Payton, and kind of the things he said to only go out and have his team give up 70 and then completely destroy the only unit that was actually any good last year for the Broncos, and that was the defense. So it would be kind of funny to see the Jets offense kind of look efficient, and it would kind of really be another negative on Peyton. But yeah, one of these teams have to win unless they tie, obviously. But I'll take the Jets.
I like the Jets as well. You mentioned just the struggling of the Denver defense. Even if Zach Wilson doesn't play perfect, I think They can run the ball. They can rely on Brees Hall to kind of, I think, get them a lot of chunk gains against this defense. They're just, I think, 30th or 31st right now in rushing defense. And then you just look at the Jets defense. I mean, obviously made Kansas City earn it. It was an ugly game for the Chiefs, but this is still such a really good secondary. And it'll be interesting to see if Russell Wilson can kind of take care of the football or not against them. I like the Jets. Might be a close one, but I do think they're the better team, even with Zach Wilson.
Next, we have the Vikings hosting the Chiefs. I like the Chiefs in this one. I don't know how much of a fight the Vikings will put up. They're certainly capable of putting up some points, and that might happen.
Right.
This might be a game where the Chiefs defense doesn't look as strong as it was through the first 4 weeks or so. But I still like Kansas City to squeak this one out. Again, like we said last week, I think the biggest thing for Kansas City is obviously wins and losses are important, but much like like the Patriots before, it's like you're not worried about winning enough games to make it. You're going to win enough games. You're looking at more of the big picture, and can the Kansas City offense kind of put together a 1 through 4 quarter performance that is far more similar to what we've seen over the last handful of years, as opposed to the spottiness of what we've seen throughout. Because the reality of it is that there's far better offenses right now just looking in a vacuum at exclusively, not in the past, nothing projected. Right now there are a handful of offenses that are just better than Kansas City. So
Mhm.
that advantage that they really had isn't there. So they need to, and we've seen it, they need to get more creative when it comes to winning football games. And that means sometimes defensively, but also they still have to go out and consistently put together a more efficient offense. It doesn't mean scoring more necessarily. It just means less of these ups and downs, and kind of all of a sudden they look great on the first drive, and then all of a sudden it's 3 drives of it seems like they're kind of just discombobulated. And look, you can speak to this more than anyone. Could you watch them far more and pay far more close attention? It's what they're going through. And look, I mean, they're 3-1. That's what great teams do. They still win football games when they're transitioning and evolving. I just think, and if it gets to a point though where you're like, okay, 4 or 5 weeks, we've seen the struggles. Let's kind of see it all be put together and beat a good team like the Vikings. And I don't know if I even believe that. So don't hold me to that. But I do like the Chiefs in this one. I don't know if today's the day that all the offense is going to be put together and they're going to, just run rickshaw over, everyone that he's hitting, tight ends, running backs, wide receivers getting into the mix. That's what I'm talking about. I don't know if it's going to be this week, but it's not going to matter necessarily because they're still going to win.
It's yeah, you talk about, I think, the receivers, and obviously something going around Kansas City and the fans is, will they make a trade deadline move to add to the position. I think Rashee Rice has probably been the most promising showing so far, but obviously drops have still been an issue, like it was for him at SMU. And he's really only won against zone coverage as well. So the entire team against man coverage, it just seems like is not able to gain that separation. It'll be interesting with this particular defense. Brian Flores loves to blitz, but still been able to kind of mix coverages a little bit more than I think a lot of people anticipated. I think most people believe Minnesota was still going to play heavy man coverage like they did last year. I've kind of been impressed with this defense that I didn't expect much of. They've still had their lumps, but yeah, for the receivers, I believe through 4 games, I think the numbers and the yards are actually very similar to last year, but it just seems like it's not it shouldn't be, I guess, at that same level. It seems like there's still a lot more questions than there was even at the beginning of last year, the first year without Tyreek Hill. So you want to see that separation, and I think, like you said, just become more creative as an offense. I think you could see a little bit more play action for sure instead of just dropping back simply out of shotgun. So that's something I think I'd certainly look for today. And you mentioned Vikings probably not being a really good team. I think this is one that could certainly test the Chiefs possibly, but I think this is a chance with the bounce back after last week. I think this is one that just going to be a game they're going to kind of want to go out and prove themselves. So I like the Chiefs, but yeah, it's one I want I want to be surprised if it's very close going into the fourth quarter.
Next, big game Sunday Night Football. San Francisco heading to Jerry World. What kind of team? What kind of team's identity is more centered around the owner than the actual winning? Well, probably one again who hasn't won anything since the mid '90s. So you can take your 38-3 and shove it, Rucker. I'm a little bitter. What can I say? It's only been 6-7 days. Anyway, San Francisco. Again, at home. This is a team that very appropriately a lot of people consider the best in the league, and it's hard to argue against it. Christian McCaffrey is playing, I think, MVP type football. If it's not, certainly after what we're seeing right now in London, if it's not Josh Allen, maybe it is Tua or Christian McCaffrey. Although the odds don't necessarily favor Christian McCaffrey in that sense. But he is on a stretch of scoring pretty much every time he steps on a football field, and I think that's going to continue today. I like San Francisco. I mean, they're at home. I think they're better defensively, although the Cowboys are a very elite defensive team. But I think there's a fairly big gap between them offensively, and I think San Francisco is certainly better in that regard. So give me the 49ers at home in what could be one of the best games of the season.
For sure, yeah. I'm interested to see, obviously with the play calling change, Mike McCarthy calling plays Dallas a little more balanced this year. I'm interested to see if they're kind of willing to lean on that run game and if they'll be able to kind of stay with San Francisco. And then I think Troy Aikman kind of said it best. I mean, part of the reason I think the Cowboys have lost to this team the last 2 years in the postseason, it's just such a physical matchup that right now Dallas hasn't shown they've been able to match it. So that's part of the reason I had to go with the Niners here. I just there's certain opponents I think when it comes to playing physical, you just know I think the Chiefs had it for some years against physical teams. I just don't think they have necessarily the horses to compete with that right now in Dallas. So I wouldn't be surprised if it's close, but I do like San Francisco.
Yeah, no, like I said, it should be a really good Sunday Night Football game. I mean, I've been kind of knocking on the Cowboys, but it's going to be a good one. So that's going to do it for us here today. We have about 6-7 minutes left or so in the first half of that Jaguars and Bills game. Jags obviously up still 11-0. So everyone hopefully enjoys that and enjoys the rest of Sunday's action because, like I said, I think I think we're going to have some good games here. And then we will be back, of course, next week to break it all down week 6. So thank you, everyone, for tuning in. And we will we'll talk to you then.